Okay, we Rabotai are on page 171. Chanukah Sameach, everybody, and also the shir is L'Refuat Shelema. We put the name in the shir. Let's just double check so we're reading it right. This is someone very close to us. Her name is Mazal Bat Lisa, who was in the hospital for over 2 weeks with left-sided paralysis, wasn't able to move her left side, a young mother with a 9-month-old baby. And Baruch Hashem, after 2 weeks, she started to move her legs, and she can stand, Baruch Hashem, but there's more room to recovery. So continue our learning in her zechut. Does she have a refuah shlema bekarov? Also, וגם רפואה שלמה, חננות בת שרה, וגם בר עליזה, בת חיה, Besha. V'gam, what's his name? Shavach? Avram Ben Batya. Those should have the flesh anymore. Should hear him besot a lot. Okay, Rabotai, we are getting in to the shir. The shir is Hilchot Amira Lenachri b'Shabbat. So there is sometimes a misconception when it comes to Amila Lenachri. Some people think as the guy is doing it. I can tell the guy anything, right? The guy can do it. Some people think if I hint everything to the guy, it's also okay. We're going to see, and not so much this week, but B'ezrat Hashem, the following time we learn, is that there's sometimes you're going to be allowed to directly tell the guy, and sometimes you're going to be, you might have to hint. But when exactly can you hint, and when exactly can you say directly or somewhat directly? All these things have halachot. It's not that simple that a person can just go and tell a guy to do X, Y, and Z. And we're going to now start off on page 171 with trying to find a source for the din of Amila Nachri. Really, the question is it a derabanan or is it a doraita? Am I not allowed to tell the guy to do something on Shabbat? Is that a biblical prohibition if I tell the guy to do something? Or is that just a rabbinic prohibition? So why would it be biblical? So let's take a look. We're on page 171. We're in Shir Dalid. We're in the Lax Family edition of the Tzurba Rabbanon, the Dr. Harold the Magid Katz volume. We're on page 171. I will tell you. He starts off with a pasuk. The pasuk says, "V'yoyim ha'shevi'i Shabbat la'Hashem Elokecha." This is a Parshas Yisro, right? Sarah Dibrais. Lo ta'aseh chol melacha ato v'incha v'itecha avdecha v'amasecha uvehemtecha v'girecha asher bish'arecha. And he highlights avdecha v'amatecha, your servant and your maid servant, the manservant and the maid servant. Who are we talking about? What type of manservant is this? It's not an Eved Ivri. It's an Eved Kanani. So perhaps this is a source that Goyim can't do work for us, but you can taina that an Eved Kanani has certain, right, has to keep the mitzvah say. But in note 2, he writes over here, Eved Kanani is a sort of intermediary conversion to Judaism, something in the middle. Is one who's immersed in the mikvah, and the man will also get with Brit Milah, and has all the negative commandments. So maybe this source is not such a good source because, right? So maybe he's not a legit guy in the sense that he's an independent entity. He's also somewhat of a quasi Gairist. He's somewhat of a quasi Jew. If you free him, he becomes a Jew, right? So maybe that's not a good source. All right, let's find another source. Now we're going to go page 172, source 2. It says about the Hilchot of Yom Tov, of Yom Harishon Mikrat Kodesh, of Yom HaShivi Mikrat Kodesh, Yelachem Kol Melacha Lo Yaseh. What does that mean? Kol Melacha Lo Yaseh? Right. Cannot be done. Doesn't say by who, meaning by everyone. Just you can do the malachas for eating. the direct last malachas for eating. So, what does this mean? Kol malacha lo ya'aseh v'hem. So there is a mechilta. There's a midrash halacha, the mechilta, and the mechilta says, "Kol melacha lo yaseh v'hem lo ta'aseh ata, v'lo yaseh chavarecha." Not you, not your friend shouldn't do malacha. V'lo yaseh nochri melachtecha, and also the nochri, the guy, the Eini Yehudi, should also not do your melacha. Right? So the midrash says, how do I know that's the guy? Maybe it's just your friend, and maybe the guy could do it. Sheishes yamim ta'aseh melacha. Okay, and it ends up v'lo yaseh nochri melachtech. So your nochri could not do your work. Now the mechilta seemingly understands this to be a deoraita. Pasuk says lo kol melacha lo yaseh v'hem. And that means everyone shouldn't do the malacha, including the guy. So telling a guy to do malacha, according to this mechilta, seems to be a deoraita. But it's a midrash halacha, right? It's a midrash halacha. This is on Shemot, right? Midrash mechilta. So now, the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat seems to say otherwise. The Gemara Masechet Shabbat tells us a person may not hire workers on Shabbat, and he not tell another to tell him to go hire workers for him. So the Gemara says, what difference is he says go and getting workers, and if he tells his friend to go doing it, it's one Jew to another Jew. So Amira Papa, he's talking about if he tells a guy, go get me workers, right? So Maskele Rav Ashi, Amir Nachri, Shivut. So the Gemara is quite clear that Amir Nachri is a shvut. Shvut, we said, is the Rabbanans that they put into place specially for Shabbat in order to help us with our Shevet, with our resting on Shabbat. So the Gemara says Amir Nachri is a Rabbanan. So let's take a look at the Ramban. The Ramban on Sefer Shemot. The Ramban says as follows. Ein anu muzharim b'Torah amalacha shel nachri klal. We are not forbidden at all by the Torah regarding the labor of goyim. Loy b'yom tov loy b'Shabbos. Ela sheyesh ba shvus midivreihem im ha'ira shelanu. It's only a rabbinic prohibition to tell them what to do. As we just saw that Gemara. It's clear. But we found in the Mechilta, right? So says the Ramban, when the Mechilta says that this pasuk is shouldn't do the guy work, it's not a drush deoraita saying that this is the halacha. Rather, it's an asmach the be'alma sheboy la'asma divrei amir v'melcha shalanu v'samcha otzel l'mikra hazeh. Chachamim said, listen, Amir l'nachri is aser, it's a derabbanan, and we need a source to rely on, like a lean on something, some sort of pasuk, and this is a pasuk that we can understand in this way as an asmachta, but not that it's a deoraita. That's the way the Ramban and Nachmanides understands the Isser of Amir l'nachri, understands this pasuk. However, there's another Rishon, the Sefer Yereim, and the Sefer Yereim says, "Tani v'mechilta kol malachim yasavehem lo tasa'ata lo yasech havarech lo yasech ha'ovid kachab melachtecha lemadnu mikan she'isur liyisrael lahaniach ha'ovid kachavim la'asot melachtoi bein b'yom tov bein b'Shabbos mid-deoraita." You have the Rishon in the Sefer Yereim who says that doing malacha, telling the guy to do malacha, is a deoraita. Now the question really on the Yereim is what? In Sefer Yereim, what's the question? How do you understand the Gemara? I don't have an answer for you. He'll have to work it out. Maybe he means, I was thinking maybe, I didn't see it inside, but I was thinking maybe he's saying, when he says, maybe he means is telling one guy to tell another guy. And maybe there he would say that's a shvus, right? But to tell one guy directly the Sefer Yereim understands that to be a to be a Doraita. So the Maaseh, we have here a Machloket Rishonim. Well, really, it depends. How do you understand this Mechilta? Right? Maybe that's what the Machloket is. So the Sefer Yereim understands the Mechilta as being, that's what it means. It's a Doraita Isur. And you have the Ramban, on the other hand, who is understanding the Mechilta as an Asmachta, and therefore Amila Nachri is only a Derabanan. So the Shar HaTziyun, he brings over here, he says, look at the Bet Yosef, who brings from the Sefer Mitzvot Gadol, from the Smag, regarding the Mechilta, right? And he is Mesupik, he's not sure. Ulai hu drasha gemura. Maybe it's a true, complete drasha, and it means it's midoraita. It is asur to tell a guy to do something on Shabbat, and isur doraita. Of mikol hapoiskim mashma dehu rak midrabanon. But what it looks like, majority of poskim say that telling a guy to do something is a derabanan. Then he says even further. And he says, look, in the Ramban, Shekasev Gam Kain de Nesucha Mut'it Hi B'Mechilta. It's a mistake in the Mechilta. The drush that we have in our Mechilta is a ta'ut. It's wrong. It's a mistake. Chain Hiskim Hagra. And so says the Vilna Gaon in his comments in the Mechilta that it's a wrong teaching. And he said the right one, Yalkut. Which Yalkut? The Yalkut Shimoni. He says, take a look in the Midrash Yalkut Shimoni, and there you're going to see the drush correctly. So I don't have the Sefer Yalkut Shimoni at home. I had it here, but I didn't have enough time to find it in here. But I did do an online search yesterday as I was preparing, and I did find the Yalkut Shimoni, and this is the lashon of the Yalkut Shimoni. The Yalkut Shimoni says, Kol melacha lo yaseh b'hem, lo ta'aseh ata, v'lo yaseh chebarecha. You don't do it, your friend don't do it. Aval goy yaseh melachtecha. But the guy could do your melacha, right? Aval yaseh goy melachtecha, divi Rabbi Yoshia. All right. So in the Yalkut Shimoni, the drush is flipped, right? Not to say the guy also can do it, but to say that the oraita the guy can do it. And then later on, the Rabbanan came and said it's a shvut. So if you want to learn that way, then it's the Maisa, it's the Rabbanan, the Mechilta. They want to say it has a faulty text, and even if it doesn't have a faulty text, we have the Gemara, and we have the Ramban, and we have majority of poskim who hold halacha l'maaseh, the telling a guy what to do on Shabbat, the malacha on Shabbat, is a derabanan. So we'll just sum it up over here. Outside, we have in the laws of Shabbat, 86 probably. Here we go, page 386. All right. All right, here we are. 3. Okay, here we are. 366. That's what I wrote. So, you guys, you should have neat handwriting. This way you won't get lost. Okay, so he brings over here. It is forbidden for a Jew to enlist a non-Jew to perform melacha on Shabbat. Some Rishonim state that this prohibition is a biblical prohibition, right? This would be the same for Yereim, based on the Mechilta, that states that the pasuk in Shemot says that one may not work on Pesach, and you should not do work on them, nor work shall be done on them, which implies that it's forbidden to have work done by others, namely by non-Jews. So he brings out, who else says this other than the Sefer Yereim? He brings over here the Shibulei Haleket, the Or Zarua, the Smag, the Mor Uktzia, the Pandim Meirot. So you have here a whole list, not just one. You have a whole list that says that telling a guy to do Amir L'Nachri is a Doraita. Most opinions agree, however, that the prohibition Amir L'Nachri is a rabbinical prohibition, and he brings the Ramban, Shuvot Harashba, the Rosh, Shuvat Rid, Datzekinim, the Ran, Shita Mekubetzes, the Mi'iri, El Yarabah, Mahazik Beracha, Haye Adam, Shuchnar Charav, the Mishnah Brura. So you have an even larger list of those who say that the Isser of telling a guy to do Malach on Shabbos is a Derabanan. Some opinions explain that the Mechilta only used the Psukim to support. It's an asmachta, but it's not just biblical. Some poskim even state that the Mechilta may not be authentic, and that there are different versions that state the exact opposite. Yalkut Shimoni Parshat Bo. All right, what we read to you. And the Gross says this, Sharat Zion says, Aruch HaShulchan says that the Mechilta is faulty. Okay. Later, yeah. I believe it's a later one. What did he write over here? I forgot where I read it somewhere. The Yalkut Shimoni is, I think, it's a later text. Yeah, it's a later collection of midrashim. The later collection of midrashim. I'm not sure when it was put together. I'm not sure. He's quoting the same midrash. So he's a Yalkut, right? He's collecting all his midrashim. So his text, we're understanding it, the way the girls understanding it, the text in the Yalkut Shimoni is the right text. And the way the text crept into the Mechilta is wrong. That's what we're understanding here. Okay, so that is on the prohibition. So we have to define it as rabbinic or deoraita. Is it the Rabbanan or deoraita? Comes out, there are Rishonim and there are poskim who understand it to be deoraita. We hold that telling a guy to do a melacha is a derabanan, is a shvut. Okay. Now, what would be the reason? If we read, like we read the Yalkut Shimoni, that seems to be that the oraita, you're allowed to tell a guy to do work on Shabbat, the oraita, on a strictly biblical level, according to those poskim, according to those Rishonim. Why would the Chachamim come and make this an Isser? What was their reasoning? What's the rationale? What's the reason for the prohibition? Okay. So, doing it yourself. So that's a Rambam, a Sayag. Okay, maybe a fence. All right, let's take a look. There's a Mishnah in Masechet Shabbat towards the end, Kuf Nun Gimel. The Mishnah says someone was traveling before Shabbat and night fell, and he's still on the road. Noten kiso unachri. He can give his wallet to the guy. Okay, that's what the Mishnah says. My Tama, says the Gemara. What's the reason the Chachamim let him to give it to the guy? So the Chachamim said, give it to him, give it to the guy. Why? If you don't let him give it to the guy, then what is he going to do with his wallet of money? What is he going to do with it? He's not going to leave it there. He's going to walk with it. And then he's going to end up walking Arba Amos Bereshus Harabim. But what happened to the whole Amir L'Nachri? Right? So really the Chachamim allowed it in this sense, in this case, where it's getting dark and he has his money, they allowed Amir L'Nachri to tell the guy to go carry money, because otherwise he's going to carry it himself. So, says Rashi in explaining the issue here. Rashi says, "My tamashari l'nachri." Why did they allow him to give it to the nachri? What would be the issue of giving it to the nachri, telling the nachri, take my wallet? Hare hu shlucho. He's making him his shliach to carry on Shabbat. So Rashi is saying that Amira l'nachri, you're turning the nachri, the guy, into your shliach. And then shliach shel adam k'maisai. A person shliach is like himself. So I'm not gaining anything. Right? I'm telling the guy to do it. The guy's doing it for me. The guy is me now. So I'm doing it. That's what Rashi's saying. Hare hu shlucho. Now he is his shliach. Now, there is a problem with Rashi's explanation. Why? There's a halachic principle that a guy cannot function as a shliach of a Jew. He can't do that. If so, what does Rashi mean by explaining the guy is a shliach? So Rekiva Eger explains, and he said, Chazal forbade this because the concept of agency does indeed imply to Jews' action. So let's take a look at Rekiva Eger. Rekiva Eger says, well, here's that. The Amir La'akum, the Asur Chazal, the Dami L'Shlichus, the After Ain't Shlichus Anachi. Really, there is no Shlichus Anachi. Because Malcolm Kivin the Yisrael Kahagam Yesh Bo Shlichos Asur Chazal. Since in a case similar, if a Jew would be enlisted, if I would tell another Jew to do it, Chazal forbade this. They also forbade enlisting a guy. If I would tell a Jew to do something, right, then that shlichus would be me, right, and that's also for the Jew to do, also for me to do. So the Chum also said you're not allowed to tell a guy to do, and they gave it some power of shlichus, even though it really doesn't have any shlichus. Take a look at note 12 on the bottom. Other resolutions are given to this question as well. For example, Hagot Maminot says that Chazal was strict concerning all matters pertaining to Shabbat, while the Beit Meir says that Chazal were strict on a rabbinical level to apply the terms of formal agency when a guy acts on behalf of a Jew in all cases. So that's perhaps what the Rabbi Kiva was also trying to say, that even though there really is no shlichut by a guy, Rashi says there is shlichut because the guy is actually doing it for you, and so they apply some formal agency powers to this guy. So what's Rashi's pshat in Masechet Shabbat? Amira l'nachri is aser because of shlichus, because of making him your agent. There is another Rashi. There is a Rashi in Avodah Zarah, and the Rashi says there, and where it's aser for a Jew to say to a guy, do this for me. You know why it's aser? Because we have a pasuk in Yeshayahu who tells you how to speak on Shabbat, and this is a dibur aser. This is forbidden speech. Okay, by telling him to do something that you can't do, you're saying forbidden speech, and that you cannot do, and that's why you cannot tell a guy to do malacha. If I understood this Rashi correctly, due to the general ban of performing weekday activities, including speech, as learned from the pasuk in Yeshayahu. Okay, so you're not allowed to talk about business affairs, weekly concerns, and all the forbidden activities on Shabbat. So you have two Rashi. You have Rashi, Yosef, he's here. You have the Rashi in Masechet Shabbat that says you're not allowed to say Milanach, you're not allowed to the guy do malacha. Why? Because you're making him your agent, and then it's like you're doing it. And the Rashi in the Avodah Zarah said you can't tell the guy to do something because you can't speak those things. It's a dibur aser. It's an aser to speak those things, so you can't say it. But there is the Rambam, and this Rambam. Rabbi Yagadi, you were alluding to this Rambam when you mentioned it before. Let's take a look at this Rambam. The Rambam says, even if you tell him Muktam Shabbos before Shabbos, he tells him before Shabbos, listen, he tells him on Friday afternoon or Friday morning, he tells him, do this on Shabbos, you still can't do this. So he tells him, do this on Shabbos, but I'm only going to need it for Motzei Shabbos. The Dava Zer Aser, why? Medivrei Sofrim, Kedei Shelo Tiyeh Shabbat Kaleb B'einehen. Because you don't want to make Shabbat light in your eyes. Vayavo La'asot Be'atzman. That's what you were saying. You're saying it's one step away from me doing it, right? That's what the Rambam is saying. If I'm going to be able to tell the guy to do anything, right? No, can't. The Rambam just said it. From before Shabbos. Even if you tell him before Shabbos, I only need for after Shabbos, you still can't tell him. You can't tell him to do it. And why? Because if I tell him to do it, then Shabbos becomes light in my eyes, says the Rambam. And then I'm going to end up doing it myself. Well, the guy can do it for me, I can't do it for myself. Right? And that is the... And who says they're doing any Isurim there? Any malachas? They're not doing any malachas. They're cleaning. You can clean yourself. You just got them to come and clean. Right? They're not, yeah, we'll have to look through exactly what they're doing. But let's take a look now, again, into this. Okay. So to review. We had 3 reasons. I'm going to read to you from the laws of Shabbat over here, and he brings 4 reasons. I really think they're 3, but let's see how he splits them up. Some poskim explained that when we're allowed to ask a non-Jew to perform a lacha on Shabbat, then it can lead to the trivialization of Shabbat, which can result in transgressing the malacha themselves. Who is that? That's the Rambam. It's also the Eliyah Rabbah, the Pri Megadim, the Shulchan Aruch Harav. They all give this same reason. That what? If you tell a guy to do it, you're going to make Shabbat light in your eyes, and you're going to end up doing it yourself. Number 2, some state that is including the rabbinical prohibition of Dabir Davar, discussing an action that is forbidden on Shabbat. So this was the Rashi in Avodah Zarah, and this is also the Mishnah Halachot. All right. Then he brings another one. Another issue is if that one were to ask a non-Jew to do malacha, it is as if the non-Jew is acting as his agent and be considered as if the malacha was done by the Jew himself, right? And we saw this Rashi in Masechet Shabbat, and he brings from Magen Avraham, the Aruch HaShulchan, the Meiri, who also say similar, that you're giving him power of shlichus if yourself doing it. Then he brings a 4th thing over here. You guys would tell me if it's really a separate one, it's really belonging for somewhere else. By being able to perform malachot through a non-Jew, it is degrading to Shabbat, since one can thereby circumvent the prohibition of malacha on Shabbat and work as usual with a non-Jewish aid. If this were permitted, it would detract from the harmony and rest that Shabbat is supposed to be. This is for the Ritva, but I understand it's just being like the Rambam, really, right? You're making it light. You might come to do it. You're also taking away from Shabbat, or taking away from the harmony and the rest of Shabbat the way it's supposed to be. So that is why Amira L'Nachri, according to those who say it's the Rabbanan, that's why it was made. That was the rationale for the Shvut. We want us to have Shabbat. We don't want to speak Isurim Shabbat. We don't want it to think it's someone else doing it. It's my shlichus. And you're trivializing, making it light and easy. You're going to end up doing it yourself. You're taking away from what Shabbat is supposed to be. That's why the Rabbanans of Shabbat Yom Tov are called Shivut. We saw that Ramban. The Ramban says, why is it called Shivut? Shivut means to rest also from Shabbos. It says Shabbat. Well, they made these halachot on purpose in order for you to rest properly on Shabbat and Yom Tov. Because otherwise, you can do everything on Shabbat through all these other ways. Tell the guy, they're right, no problem, right? No, you have to put this into place so you can actually have rest on Shabbat. That's what the Ramban said. Okay, so you were asking about making arrangements before Shabbat, right? And that's what the Rambam said. You can't do that. You can't tell the guy before Shabbat to do something on Shabbat. So let's take a look at the Shulchan Aruch.
Even for the sake of a mitzvah?
We're not talking about sake of the mitzvah now. We're going to get into the leniencies of when you're allowed to ask a guy something. That is going to be later on page 190. Right now, we're talking stam malachos for him to do something for us on Shabbat. But good point. Okay, let's take a look. Let's take a look at the Shulchan Aruch, source 13. Anything that you're not allowed to do, you can't tell a non-Jew to do. You hear Rabbi Yosef over here. Even to tell him before Shabbat comes in to do something on Shabbat, asur. But you're allowed to tell him after Shabbos. Why are you allowed to tell him after Shabbos? You're allowed to tell him after Shabbat, why didn't you turn on the light? That you're allowed to tell.
What actually he's going to turn on the light? What if you're every big work and you don't tell him nothing? You don't let him go to do himself.
Look, let's just understand the Shulchan Aruch right now. The Shulchan Aruch says, I can tell him after Shabbos, Lama la asita davar plani b'Shabbos sha'avar. Even though he understands that I want him to do this the next week. So
if you told him what the Shabbat like this, next week comes himself, does it, okay?
We're going to see what it means by himself, for himself. We'll have to go through all those things. Just let's get the words of Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch said, that I can tell him after Shabbat why didn't he do such a thing, that will put in his brain that he should have done it, and maybe next week he'll do it. Says the Shulchan Aruch Harav. Mutter lemel lenachi achar Shabbos. Madua lo asita davar ploini b'Shabbos she'avra. Apal pisha maybe me talk to our shirot sanoshi asenu b'Shabbos haba ein bekach klum. It's nothing. Even though he's going to imply and understand for next week, it's still nothing. Why? Kivan shamirlai came b'chol. He told them this on a weekday. He didn't tell him on Shabbos. Ve'ein ba'amirasoi zoi shum remez tzivui la'asoisa b'Shabbos haba el shanochri mevin kan me'atzmoi. But the Nochri understands it on his own. Right.
But in order for him to get to your house, you know he lives far away. He's not gonna. He's gonna drive here to come Friday night to watch.
Right.
You don't have to fix them because you know they come Friday night.
And it's coming.
So you ask him, I need you to please come Friday night to wash my dishes after the meal. She comes, but she doesn't live near you. She's gonna drive to get to you.
Right.
She's not
Right. We'll have to get into that. We're not going to get into that today, but that's a good question. That is a good question. Stomach should be okay. Them doing their own traveling to get wherever they want. I'm not forcing into that, but we'll take a look into it. It's a good question. It's a good question. I just wanted to bring down over here the Alkut Yosef. Okay. After Shabbat is over, however, one may say to a non-Jew, why didn't you come over and do this and this act for me today? And the non-Jew will understand that he's to perform the service on the following Shabbat. Okay, so that's what he says over here as well. We're going to see when. This is not always. This is not. You can hint it when something is allowed to be hinted. It's only something that's allowed to be hinted anyway. Even if it's on Shabbat, you're allowed to hint it. You're allowed to hint it after Shabbat also. But I don't think you can tell him straight up because you can't do something for you on Shabbat, even if you told him. It's as working as a hint. Working as a hint. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Let's go to this next case, I will tell you. This next case, listen to this. Aser says the Shulchan Aruch. Aser loimer le'eni Yehudi b'Shabbat. You're not allowed to tell a guy on Shabbat. Heilech basar zeh uvashel oto l'tzarchech. Va'afilu ein mizanotav alav. You're not allowed to tell a guy, take this meat, go cook yourself something to eat. Even though you're not responsible to feed him. You hear this? You're telling the guy, take this piece of meat and go cook yourself a meal. I'm not allowed to tell him to do that on Shabbat. Says the Rama, of a mutter loy meloy la'asot melacha le'atzmai. But you're allowed to tell the guy to do a melacha for himself. So what's the difference in these cases? It sounds exactly the same, right? Also, let me then Yehudi b'Shabbos helech basar zeh uvashel oto l'tzarchech va'afilu ein mizanotav alav. And says the Rama of a mutter loy meloy la'asot melacha le'atzmai. So the Mishnah Berurah explains what's the difference. The kivan she'oto davar she'omer le'en Yehudi la'asot b'shvil atzmo hu enu yachol ba'atzon la'asoisu b'chlal Amira le'enu Yehudi shvus v'aser afal pi she'enu mithanei Yisrael chlal b'malacha zu. Says Mishnah Berurah as follows: he couldn't do the malacha without you, even though the malacha is for himself. Even though the malacha is for himself, he couldn't do the malacha without you. Therefore, you're not allowed to tell him to do it. The kivishoy adavar me'olam shel Yisrael klav vehu ve'eni Yehudi oisa otu gam kein rak b'shul atzmoi la'gazer lav isu the iser the Amira le'enu Yehudi. So the difference in cases is as follows. The first case Shulchan Aruch said was the Jew has the meat, or the Jew has the product, and he tells to the guy, take this, the Jews, and gives to the guy, and tells the guy, take this and go cook yourself a meal. That is usher. You just did a meal on Achrim. Even though he's going to cook it for himself, the guy. But it was your piece of meat. It was your whatever. And you gave it to him. You're involved in that malacha now. That's usher. But if I told the guy, go take out from your freezer, your meat, and go make a barbecue and eat it on Shabbat, right? And I'm telling him to make a barbecue, but with his own meat, that's mutar to say. That's mutar to say. What's the isur? If I tell him, take my meat and go cook it for yourself on your grill. That's asur. That's the chiluk. Okay? Let's take a look at it in the laws of Shabbat over here. It's forbidden to tell a non-Jew to perform malacha on Shabbat, even if the non-Jew will only be performing the malacha for himself and not for the Jew. However, this is only forbidden if the non-Jew will be using the belongings of a Jew to perform the malacha. If the non-Jew is going to be using your stuff, the Jew stuff, and you tell him, go do it for yourself, that would still be Isser. Since the non-Jew is doing the malacha through a Jew's request and by using the Jew's item, he is considered an agent in regard to the malacha that he performs. You made him your shliach now. You tell him, go cook, and you're giving him your stuff. For example, one may not give a non-Jew meat and tell him to go cook it for himself on Shabbat. However, it's permissible to tell a non-Jew to go home and cook meat from his own freezer on Shabbat, and that will be okay. Here's a couple other examples he gives. One may not give one's lawn mower to a non-Jew on Shabbat, even if the non-Jew wants to mow his own lawn. However, one may tell him to mow his lawn with his own lawnmower. So you can see the guy and say, hey, your grass is overgrowing. You should cut it. Mow your lawn. That's mutar to say. But to tell him, hey, I got a lawnmower, go use it, that you can't tell him. That's a asur. Next case. One may not lend his car to a non-Jew to drive around with on Shabbat. But you can tell the guy, go drive your own car. All right, get in your car, move your car. All right, that you can say. One may not let a non-Jew use the phone in one's home on Shabbat, but one may tell him to use his own phone. You know, right? You want him to call something, don't call call from your own phone. All right, go call the cops. Something's going on over here. Right? You tell him to go call on his own phone. He can't use your phone.
On his own dad. I'm gonna call my cousin.
He says two things. He says you're telling him to do it, and you're giving him your thing. So you're saying, I'm not telling him, he just wants to use your phone. Are you having any benefit from it? Okay, so wait for a little more. We're going to see if the Jew really has no benefit at all from it and the guy does it, that may be okay. But if you have some benefit from like you want that phone call also to happen, right? That might be a different problem. But okay, so that's the example over here. Okay. Two quick halachot he brings here. He says if it's permitted to tell a non-Jew the telephone number of someone that the non-Jew wants to contact, even though it's possible the non-Jew will write down the number. So the guy comes to you, you remember the number? And you know the number, you're allowed to tell him the number. If a non-Jew is driving a car, stops to ask a Jew for direction, it is permitted to tell him directions, even though he will drive to that destination. So you're allowed to give him directions, even if you know he's going to drive there. Well, we don't know who he is. Okay.
And not in the case of also.
Right. But you know for sure they're Jewish.
Yeah.
It's a good question. I don't know what to do there. I guess you're not allowed to tell them.
One hand, if you don't tell them, they're going to go around.
Right, and drive more. If you tell them, I'm not sure. Maybe you don't speak English at that time. Okay. Rabotai, continuing on. All right. Now we're going to get into before I get into the leniencies and all that, when you're allowed to ask, when you're allowed to hint and all that, we're going to get into benefiting from a guy's malacha. So the guy does a malacha on Shabbat. Can I benefit from that malacha? Right? And he's lighting it for his own purposes. What does he say? Then you're allowed to use it. In Bishvil Yisrael, usher. But if he lights it for a Jew, then you're not allowed to use it. The guy's doing his own malacha. The guy did it. He lit a candle. If he lit it just for himself, then you're allowed to use it. But if he's lighting it for you, right? What's an example? He's your friend and he sees you're in the dark and he wants to help you out. Not lighting it for himself. He wants to help you out. So he lights it. So then it's for you and it's asur. Yeah, even if you didn't ask. Even if you didn't ask. Says, what's the Mishnah says, even if the Gentile performs a labor independently without being asked. Tosfot explains that the reason for this prohibition is to ensure that a Jew does not ask a Gentile to perform a halacha for him. Right? Because why does Chacham say, even if he does it just for you, you didn't even ask him, why is it still usher? Because if you allow to benefit from what the guy does for you, even if you didn't ask him, then you're going to come to ask him. Even though it seems to be a gzera, right? We don't want you to ask, even though it's really allowed, because then you might do it yourself. And now he's doing it by himself, also because then you might come to ask, which might come to yourself doing it, right? But it seems to be part of the same inyan of Amira L'Nachri. Look at the Shulchan Aruch. Ein Yehudi shehidlik esanei b'shvil Yisrael, aser lakol. Everyone's not allowed to benefit from it. Afilu l'misha lo hudlik b'shvilo. You hear this? The guy comes and he lights the candle for Yosef. And then I want to come. He didn't light it for me. And then I come. Can I use it? No. It's also for everybody. Once he lights it for one Jew, also for all Jews. But if he lights it for himself, or he lights it for a cholish ein boy sakana, which is mutter to tell a guy to do something, mutter l'kol Yisrael l'hishtamish lo'oro. Then you can use that light. You hear this, Shulchan Aruch? Shulchan Aruch says that if he lights it for a Jew, all Jews are usher to use it. Not just the one he lit it for, but for everybody. Even if he lit it on his own accord. Don't look for exceptions right now. Right now, just get the rule, and then we'll bring the leniencies and everything else up. He's a nice guy. Yeah, he puts a light for you. Asur. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. We're going to get into that. Question is, let's say he came in, right, and he turned on the lights, and it's freezing cold outside. Do I have to leave my house? Do I stay in the house? Or I didn't ask him to do it. How do I go about it? A lot of good questions. But right now, the principle is that if the guy does malacha for a Jew, any Jew, it becomes also for all Jews to use that malacha. If he's doing it for himself, right, then I'm allowed to use it. If he's doing it for a cholish ein boy sakana, I'm allowed to use it. Says the Shulchan Aruch even further. Let's say a non-Jew went to gather herbs, right? And he's taking things out of the ground. And he then, then there's some left over. And you want to give it to your animals to eat. So the says of Shulchan Aruch, if the guy knows you, and he knows you also have animals, then when he goes out to collect, you know what he has on his back of his mind? I got this Jewish guy here. I know he can't collect on Shabbat food for the guy. You know what? I'm going to collect for him. Because he's a good neighbor. He's your friendly neighbor. He wants to help you out. Right? So then, even though he's doing it for himself, he's collecting this grass, whatever it is, for his animals himself, but he's increasing the par. He's increasing the amount because he wants to help you out. It becomes asur as well. So he's not doing it just for me. He's just adding on for the Jew a little bit. Comes asur as well. So if the Gentile does not know him, it's forbidden to. It does know him, it's forbidden because we're concerned that the guy may increase the amount on the Jew's behalf, which is forbidden. But there is no concern he will increase the amount, such as lighting a candle for himself or building a ramp. Right? Let's say he lights a candle for himself, but maybe he also thinking to light it for. The guy walks in. So unfortunately, the Jew and the non-Jew is sharing an apartment. Okay, and the guy walks in and he says, "Hey, Harry, can you read?" And you say no, and he says, "Oh, I'm going to put on light. I want to also read." And he turns on the light. He's turning it on for himself to read. But you're also there. So can I use it? He's also doing it for me. So says Shulchan Aruch, that's not called increasing. Why is that not called increasing? Because once you turn on the light's on. All right, one light is for how many people come to the shul? You have 50 people in the shul, it's the same light. I'm not putting on more candles. I'm putting the same light. All right, I'm not going to go in and start putting new lights and I have more people in the shul. This is the light that's here. So the guy's turning on the light, and I'm using it. He wants to use it, and you're also there. He wants to put it on for you too. That's okay, as long as he's putting it on for himself. And that item is used for everyone. But if he's increasing the number, that means he's increasing the amount of produce he's taking, or how much he's cooking, or something like that, because he wants to help the Jew. Then that would be a problem. But if it's a ramp or lights or something like that, that it's anyway one light for 100 people, then that won't be a problem. Regarding the kind of malacha which ultimately or automatically benefits many people at once, such as kindling a light or building a ramp, it is not meaningful to speak of adding. When anyone lights a candle, the light is equally beneficial for everybody. When someone builds a ramp, it stands for benefit to all those who pass by. But regarding many other malachot, the number of beneficiaries depend on the quantity of the malacha. If the Gentile is cooking potatoes, and he or she knows that it's not necessary to cook more potatoes in order for additional people to benefit. Okay, so the Shmirat Shabbat Kilchata, I want to finish this section, so a little quicker over here. Shmirat Shabbat Kilchata says, if a guy performs labor on behalf of someone who is ill, it is submitted for everyone to benefit. We saw this. That's only if he's doing something and he's not adding for another Jew. And the doing that he's doing is not muktzah. But if there's concern that the guy added for someone else, or add because of someone who's healthy, or what he's doing is muktzah, it is forbidden for a healthy Jew to benefit from it. He goes through the candles. We talked about that. But if you think that he's doing it for the Jew also, so it's a problem. So it comes out as follows. The guy is doing it for the Jew, asur. You're not allowed any benefit. Any Jew is not allowed to benefit from it. The guy is doing it for himself, you're allowed to doing benefit. If the guy is doing it for him and the Jew, it depends on the case. If he's doing more for the Jew, then it'd be usur. If he's just doing it and it happens to benefit more, even though that's his thought, but it's not actually doing more, the same exact thing, then you would be allowed to benefit from it. Okay, there is a din that if a guy does something for the Jew on Shabbat, which he's not allowed to do, and now it's after Shabbat, can I use it automatically, or do I have, or can I use it right after Shabbat, or do I have to wait? So there's a Gemara in Masechet Be'ah, right? According to the time in which it would be done. Amira Papa. Right? Then you're not allowed to use it. And Nami and in the nighttime, a lot of Nami Asurin, you would have to also wait until after Shabbat. So what's the story here? The guy goes on Yom Tov and he goes to the field and he's cutting produce. And he comes and he brings it to you on Yom Tov. He did it for you. So I'm not allowed to have enough from that malacha, right? I'm not allowed to choice. We just saw that. The guy does something for me, I'm not allowed to have. So now it is Motzei Yom Tov. So what did the Gemara say? You have to wait for the time it would take. So let's say it takes 10 minutes to cut it and bring it. You have to wait 10 minutes after Yom Tov to be able to use that. It's a penalty. What's the penalty for? Says Rashi, because we don't want we don't want you to have hana benefit from Yom Tov, right? And Tosfot says the reason is El Hatam Shema Yom Lenachi Lech go and pick for me. Meaning, if you're able to use it right away, then you felt like you had some benefit from it, right? Because otherwise, I would have to go to the field and get it after the Chag, and now I have it here already. So therefore, he said, no, you're not going to get any benefit from it. You are waiting. You're waiting, so you don't feel like you gained anything by having this guy bring it to you. Says the Shulchan Aruch, if a guy collected or trapped for a Jew, or Bishvil Yisrael of any Yehudi, and he added, right, Sarach lamtin le'erev b'chtei she'asu. You have to wait in the evening for the time it would take for this malacha to have been done. Says the Mishnah Berurah, but tam to asu, and the reason why they answered it is what? The whole ad kadesh asu shlo yahanu b'melechas ha'ne'es b'shvil Yisrael b'Shabbos. So you shouldn't have any hana from malacha that's done on Shabbos. The gam the gazru the kshemut from Motzei Shabbos miyad yarmu le'en Yehudi b'Shabbos le'echen she'em mezuman on Motzei Shabbos miyad, because otherwise it brings Rashi and Tosfot Mishnah Berurah. Two reasons why you don't want him to, why you have a nut and you have to wait until after Chag, the time it would take to do this malacha. Number one, that you don't want him to have any malacha, hana from malacha that's done in Yom Tov. And number two, if you're able to use it right away, he might go and tell the guy, do it, because then I'll be able to use it right after Shabbat. The Mishnah Berurah also notes some other important points. If he does it for a Jew or for a group of people that is Rov Jews, any Jew, even someone other than the intended beneficiary of the malacha. So let's say he went and he cut those produce and he brought it to you. And then I come and I want to use it. I also have to wait. This applies when the violation of Shabbat included a malacha mid-deoraita. You only have to wait for a deoraita. And the travel time spent by the guy is included in the b'chtei she'asu, what you have to wait for. So let's say he went to the field and came back, and he cut it and he came back, and all that took an hour. You're going to have to wait a whole hour after Yom Tov. So I don't know how you do this. You ask the guy how long it took you to cut it and bring it back. I guess you'll have to estimate, or you ask him. Says the Mishnah Berurah, and if the local population was half Jews and half Goyim, or if it was known that he also trapped or collected for a Jew, the Jew must wait. This is even for another Jew. Even if it wasn't collected for this specific Jew, he collected for Yosef and Moshe came. Since the guy performed the biblical labor for a Jew, it's forbidden for any Jew to benefit until after Shabbat and wait that time. And the Jew does not know from where he brought the produce. The time he must wait is enough time for bring him from outside the tchum. If you don't know where he came from, then you have to wait the time it usually takes to come from outside the tchum. If you went on horseback, it's a little faster. You can cheshbon that as well. Okay, an interesting halacha. Listen to this Shulchan Aruch, Rabotai. Asa en Yehudi b'Shabbos aron oikever la'atzmai. Mutar Yisrael likaver by. So a guy makes his own coffin on Shabbat. I'm allowed to use that coffin for a Jew. V'em asu b'shvil Yisrael. But if he made a coffin for a Jew on Shabbat, lo yikaver bo olamit. You can never use that coffin. V'dafka she'akever b'farhesia v'aron al-gabo she'kol yodim shenasa l'poni Yisrael. Says Shulchan Aruch. Usually we say you have to wait b'chtei she'asu, the amount of time it takes to do the malacha. You wait and then you can use it, but not when it's yedua to everybody that it was done for the Jew. A coffin, that was an example Shulchan Aruch brought. Everybody knows that this guy made it for the Jew, and you know this coffin, you see this coffin, you know the color, you know the shape. You know when it was made and everything. That becomes asur la'olam. Because it was made on Shabbat and it's recognizable that it was made on Shabbat for a Jew. You hear this? So even though usually you say b'chtei she'asu, if it's such an item that everybody knows what it was made for, It's going to be Aser L'Olam, for forever. Just take a look over here. A biblical malacha that was performed by a non-Jew on behalf of a Jew is forbidden for benefit even for other Jews who the malacha was not specifically performed for. In the above cases, when it is prohibited to benefit from the malacha, it is additionally forbidden until the duration of time normally needed for the malacha to be performed after Shabbat. Example of this include if a non-Jew carry an item Reshut Rabim to Reshut Yachid on behalf of a Jew, no Jew is allowed to use the item on Shabbat. Not until after Shabbat, until the time it takes. Likewise, if a non-Jew drove food over in a car, it's forbidden for benefit until after Shabbat as well. Okay. 391. Let's just see over here. It is forbidden to benefit from malacha of a non-Jew, even if one is unsure if the intention was the non-Jew was to perform the malacha for a Jew. I'm a suffix. I have a suffix. He did it for me or he didn't do it for me. Can't use it. If one is unsure if the malacha that was done by a non-Jew on behalf of a Jew was performed on Shabbat or not, it's forbidden to benefit from the malacha until after Shabbat. You see, he did it, but you don't know when he did it. On Shabbat, you have a suffix if he did it on Shabbat or not. Asur, you have to wait until after Shabbat. So it's not that simple. I have a guy, a Shabbos guy. People have a Shabbos guy. Everything goes. It's not that simple at all. Okay. What? Yeah, right. Listen to this. David, you asked this question. Even if one told a non-Jew to not perform the malacha, and the non-Jew performed the malacha with the intention for the Jew anyways, it is forbidden to benefit from this malacha. I told the guy, don't do it. He goes ahead and does it. He says, I'm still going to do it for you. Asur. Still can't use it. He did it for you. I say he did it for you. You can't use it. Okay. Let's just do this last part. What about b'chtei she'asu when it comes to a rabbinic matter? Okay, the guy did a malacha derabanan, not a malacha deoraita. Okay, he did a malacha derabanan. So says the Shulchan Aruch on page 186. All right, so there's two parts over here. Says the Mishnah Berurah, page 185, source 29. The hu adin mechol malachas deoraita sha'asa hein Yehudi b'shvil Yisrael. Right? It's only deoraitas that you have to wait b'chtei she'asu. The Rabbanans, no. Now, the other question here is, the Gemara says, look at source 30. V'im enum otam mechuar tochatchum mutar. Chutz l'tchum asur. V'hu b'shvil Yisrael zeh. Mutar liYisrael acher. So the guy didn't rip the produce out of the ground. It's already ripped. It's already ripped. He didn't have to do the malacha deoraita of kotzer, of toish. He didn't have to do that. He just brought it from a tchum, outside the tchum, which is the Rabbanan, right? Regular tchum is the Rabbanan. So he writes over here, the Gemara, the Jew can't use it, but it's mutar liYisrael acher. Another Jew can use it. So on Shabbat, the guy did a Rabbanan. The what's it called? The Jew that he did it for cannot use it, but the Jew that he didn't do it for can use it. The Tosafot says if the guy did perform malacha for the benefit of a Jew, even the intended beneficiary may not benefit as soon as Shabbat or Yom Tov has concluded. May benefit as soon as concluded with no further delay. Okay, so this is the question I will tell you. We said b'chtei she'asu doesn't apply by rabbinic prohibitions, right? But let's say he did it for me dafka. So there's a machloket Tosfot and Ran. Tosfot says the guy did a rabbinic prohibition right after Yom Tov or Shabbat. you can right away use it. Not a problem. There's no b'chtei shi'asu. The Ran says, on the other hand, no. Who doesn't have to wait b'chtei shi'asu? Another Jew. But if he did it for me, then I still have to wait. Even though the halacha is that the other Jew can use it on Shabbat, b'chtei shi'asu still applies for the guy that he brought it for. I can't use it not on Shabbat, and not till after Shabbat, until the time it takes to be done. That's the Ran. And the Shulchan Aruch brings it down, lahalacha. He brings it down in source 33. The guy brought it on Shabbat or Yom Tov. The guy who he brought it for not allowed to eat it. And for Motzei Chai, Motzei Yom Tov, you have to wait for the time for it to be done. But for the other Jews, they can use it right away. So dirabanan, a dirabanan. And the guy did it. I didn't ask him to do it, right? And he did it, and he brought it. I cannot use it. I cannot use it until after Yom Tov, until the time it takes. But another Jew can use it right away, even on Shabbat. But then he has the yesh armim the dilma shehuva b'shviloi mutzil erev miyad. No, perhaps he could. There is no b'chtei shiasu, and he says a stam vayesh in the Shulchan Aruch. You have a stam vayesh of what it is, and here he writes, if the guy did a rabbinical malacha, it is submitted for other Jews for the malacha was not made for it to use right away, and halacha he brings that we follow the stam. Wait a minute. So it turns out you follow the stam. So Rabotai, listen to this halacha. Let's get it very clear. Let's bring the deoraita and let's bring the derabanan. If the guy did a malacha deoraita for a Jew, the Jew said, don't do it. He still does it. It's asur for you. It's asur for every other Jew. And you cannot use the thing that he did until after Shabbat, the time it takes for it to be done. That's when it comes to deoraita. When it comes to derabanan, I never told the guy to do it. I told him not to do it. Now the guy brings it, right? And he brings his produce, whatever it is, that he did it, and he just brought it from outside the tchum. And now he put it in front of me. I cannot use it. I cannot use it on Shabbat. And I cannot use it after Shabbat until the time it takes to be done. Then I can use it. Like the stam of the Shulchan Aruch, like the Ran. For everyone else, they can use it on Shabbat already. For everyone else, they can use it on Shabbat already. When it comes to the Rabbanan, so you have to know what's the right to Rabbanan. You have to be able to walk through Shabbat to understand what's the right to Rabbanan in order to apply this halacha. Says the Mishnah Berurah, who is considered, he brought it for me. Who is considered me? Says the Mishnah Berurah on page 187, L'mish huva b'shvilo, umuvar l'kman, b'siman, he brings the siman here, that what? That this is the Ainu halacha, livnei beito da'asur. This is the same halacha for the whole house. He comes to me, he says, Moshe, I brought this for you. Well, it's not just me anymore. It's me, it's my wife, my kids, everybody who's in my house. We all can't use it. Even for the archim, even for the guests that they were in my house, also can't use it. I said they're under my domain. And then he writes, Mishnah Berurah, V'em hevi limchor be'er. And if he came to sell it in the city, be'er sheruba Yisrael, where the majority of the city is Jews, asur lekol the vishvil kulam hevi. So even it's a derabanan, but he didn't bring it for just you. He brought it to sell. He wants to sell it to everyone, so that everyone can't use it until after the Chag or after Shabbat and b'chtei shiasu, because he brought it for them. Yeah. Okay. Here is the final halacha Rabotai, page 187. We're still waiting for one more, right? Okay. Says the Rama, Mihu, im asa en Yehudi, bebet Yisrael midato. The guy that did it on his own initiative. Ena Yisrael tzarich letzet, alpha pi shenhena min haner or min hamendura. So the guy decided to put on the fire. The guy decided to turn on the lights. Now, I can't benefit from it if he's doing it for me, right? But I still don't have to leave my house. I don't have to leave my house. Says the Mishnah Berurah, "Hainu davka achar shechvar asaha enu Yehudi. Uma yesh lo liyisrael la'asod." What should the Jew do now? Lo hitrichuhu letzet mehabayit bishvil zeh. V'zarnu lahavol shelo la'asod ken. But you should, what's it go tell him? Avam iznaman liyisrael sherebe be'ed sheni Yehudi roitzeh lahadlik bishvilo o la'asod medura tzarich limchol biyado. You have to tell him, hey, don't do this. Afilu im ze beito shel en Yehudi. Let's say I'm putting up in the guy's house and he's doing it for me. I have to stop him. Gan kain tzarich limchos. Kivin shahaner v'ha'etzim shel Yisrael. Someone belongs to the Jew, and therefore he can't do it. So the Mishnah Berurah says that you don't have to leave the house, but you gotta protest and tell him not to do this. Says the Shulchan Aruch Harav, the same is Kamalkum lo hitrichu al Yisrael litzet mibeito kishemadlik bo hanochri ner bishvilo midat atzmo avisheyesh lo hanov meor haner rak shlo yishtamish. Says the Shulchan Aruch Harav, rak lo yishtamish klum lo oiroi v'chem b'medura, but he cannot use it at all. You don't have to leave the house, but you cannot use the light. You cannot use the fire.
Yeah.
I prayed. I don't know what else. Says the Shulchan Aruch Harav, and the same if he spends Shabbat in an inn, in the house of a guy. He need not leave when the guy turns on lights. For since he spends Shabbat there, it becomes like his house. And if he wants to behave in the matter of Chassidut, he should turn his face away from the light to demonstrate he has no interest in it. Just to finish up with time very quick, in the laws of Shabbat. We're still waiting, right? If a non-Jew turned on a light on behalf of a Jew on Shabbat in a Jew's home, the Jew does not have to leave the home, but he may not use the light to perform a task that one could not have done without the light on. For instance, it's permitted to drink in the room. However, it's not permitted to read a book. I couldn't read before he turned it on. Now that he turned it on, I still cannot read a book, even though the light's on there. If the non-Jew turned on the light on behalf of a Jew in the home of a non-Jew, the Jew must leave the room and is not permitted to even perform tasks that he could have done without the light. So the guy's in the non-Jew's home and the guy turns on for you in his home, you have to leave his house. Even in the home of a Jew, if a Jew told a non-Jew to turn on the light on Shabbat, the Jew is obligated to leave the room, even if he could have used the room for some activity before the light was turned on. So I told the guy Be'isur to go turn on the light, I now have to leave the room. You hear this? If I told a guy Be'isur to turn on the light, I have to leave. In a place where a non-Jew and a Jew live together, and the non-Jew turns on the light on behalf of the Jew without the Jew asking him to do so, it is permitted for the Jew to remain in the room, but he may not benefit from the light. It comes out, Abutai, it's not so pashut, just a guy turns on this and that. There's many problems, and you can't do these things. Person has to be very careful. Okay, Abutai, next week, like Malkiel, we'll get into mitzvah, we'll get into, for other reasons, where there will be leniencies in asking a guy, including asking by hinting, when that's allowed, when you're allowed to ask directly, and stuff like that. We will see as we go forward through this shir. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you, Hanukkah.